Trylko, Sons of UCF at the UCF Soccer Complex. One season ago, men's soccer lofty in the rankings, hitting number one at one point in the season. Of course, the end of the season didn't turn out quite like the Knights had hoped. Now, how did the Knights sustain success in year two in the Sun Belt? I spoke with head coach Scott Calabrese about the upcoming season. All right, Coach, I've been thinking about your tenure here. How has this program changed during the time in which you've been here?
Well, there's been a lot of change, and I think you start with the athletic department, obviously, and the growth and the change of conference and moving from the American to the Big 12 and being a P4. So I think from if you start with the athletic department, it's just growing at this incredible rate. We're continuing to try to compete at higher and higher levels. So I think as a starting point, you have that, and then you have our soccer program. And I'd like to think that we've established an identity as a program, and that identity is clear across college soccer in terms of how we play. I'd say you have the quality of the program itself and the players that we're able to attract here, the players we're able to produce, the football the group's able to play. And I think we've had a good level of success in that tenure. So, I do think we have moved forward, and we want to continue to.
Does it speak to the growth of the program that there are a lot of people that are disappointed with the way last season ended for your team? Despite all that success throughout the season, that may speak to the growth of the program.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking to the person, number one person who was disappointed. I think the players were disappointed. They wanted more at the end of that season. I think we set a bar, and the players set a bar. And as we got to the end of the season, we had expectations that we were going to continue. And I think what was important is we didn't achieve some of the goals that we had at the end of the season. And so now what do you do? Well, you have to examine it. You have to understand it. And what are the lessons you can take from it? And how can you take another step forward? Because I think clearly last year with some of the teams that we were able to compete with, we had positive results against Clemson, beat Clemson. They won the national championship, got a result against West Virginia. So we had established we were playing at this very high level. And we weren't able to produce that same level at the end of the season. So for us, we want to get again to that level. And then how can we sustain that level? How can we be able to produce our best football and our best results at the end of the year as well? But you do have to win now as well. So yeah, it's a big challenge, and we'll see if we've learned some lessons.
Fair or unfair, this statement? The moments at the end may be too big for the team. Is that fair or unfair?
I think it's multiple factors that went into the end of last season. I do think there's a lot of attention being number one. And so how do you handle success? And to not be carried away by it, right? Enjoy, you've produced results that have led you to this ranking. But the ranking is somebody's subjective view of us, who isn't in our training environment, isn't in our locker room. So you can't be carried away by that, right? It can't distract you from what you need to do, which is every day you've got to put in work to continue to get better. And I think that's key. No matter what our ranking is, whether we're ranked or unranked, whether you get individual awards or you don't. Those are all distractions from what really matters, which is, okay, we've got to get better every single day. And there are going to be all sorts of distractions this year too. We don't know what they are. So we have to keep our focus on the things that matter and the things that make us better. And then when we get to the end of the year, we have to be playing our best football. We have to be so connected as a group, just from a just team culture standpoint, and we want to have a group that's healthy going into that period of time. They're not fatigued to the level maybe they were last year, and that they're fresh enough to really produce their best football. So those are the lessons we tried to take out of last year.
When you heard the final whistle, did you anticipate you'd see Anderson and Luca in a UCF uniform again?
Yeah, I had hoped that we would, and I think I knew that they would have opportunities, and I'm really proud of the decision they made to come back, because I think it was two parts. It was, they feel like they have something more to give to UCF, right? And they came in, and in their first year, we were conference champions, regular season champions, went to the Sweet 16, right? So they feel like, okay, that's the standard that they want for this program, that we all want. So that was part of their decision. And then the other part of their decision is something that I'm most proud of, which is they have to finish their degree. And to leave UCF with a degree, I think that sets them up for life beyond football. And they both will have opportunities after UCF to continue to play. But at some point, we all have to step away from the game as players, and there's another part to our life. And I think they thought about that, and they cared about that.
What's the challenge in coaching a couple of guys like that, these sort of super seniors, to continue to motivate them? I know they came back for those reasons, and they've got a fire inside of them, but I mean, they're older now than a lot of the guys on the team. I mean, there's a certain sense of maybe they could be doing something else in their lives. I mean, how do you pivot a little bit on coaching to put that fire into them?
I think their role in the team's different now, and they're leaders within the team, so they have to do so much more, and they're expected to do so much more, and people look to them. So I think there's a lot of motivation. They're very connected to their teammates, and so they have this huge motivation as well to help them to be successful. I think them knowing this is it, like, that's a reality. Like, this is the last season, and so there's a ton of motivation in the last dance, and that's where they are. This will be the last time that they get to play for UCF. And that, I think, is incredibly motivating for them.
You changed leagues. Anything about the Sun Belt that stood out to you different than you might have anticipated?
It's such a good league. I think when you look at the league, the success of the league, 3 top 5 teams. So we were in the top 5. Marshall was in the top 5. West Virginia was in the top 5. JMU ended up going, I think, to the 16. You had so many elite teams, and I think Kentucky as well. I almost left them off, but goodness, they're so good. And all those teams have a history of NCAA tournament runs. Marshall's won a national championship in recent history. So I would say that the league it's top 3 in the country. I think the difference in this league is I do think the coaching is exceptional. The coaches in this league are so prepared. They're so good. They have obviously a couple SEC teams are in this league, so they're very well resourced. There's 2 Big 12 teams in this league again, so now you're dealing with power conference teams, and the other teams that soccer is a huge priority on their campus. So it is a very good league.
When you're in such a tough league like this, you can't exactly take the non-conference schedule off. I mean, you need those games to prepare and to boost your RPI.
Yeah, I think when you look at our schedule, I want to say there's 9 teams on our schedule out of the 15 games that were in the NCAA tournament last year. So big challenge, and I think the non-conference, it prepares us to play at that level, and there's not a game that you can not be at your best and expect to come away with a result. And that's what we need. That's absolutely what we need, because if you want to beat the Marshalls of the world, the West Virginias of the world, the Kentuckys of the world, JMUs of the world, South Carolina's getting better, you have to be prepared to play at that level, and our non-conference schedule is absolutely going to do that.
What do you like most about this team?
I feel like, I think there's 2 things. I love the connection of the group. I feel like this group, more than some of the past groups that have done really well, there's this deeper connection. There's it feels, rather than a couple groups, feels like one group, and not only do they get along, but I think they really enjoy spending time together. So I think that's good, and I do think this group has a chance to be very solid when we don't have the ball. And I think we have experienced players, smart players, who, when we don't have possession, which that's been a big part of our identity, is what we do when we have the ball. But there have been times maybe we've been a little vulnerable without the ball. I think this group has a chance to be really difficult to beat.
What do you not know that you're going to need some games to figure out?
Well, you know, the honest answer is when you have a 13-day preseason.
That's crazy when you say it, right? It's just too short.
It's so short. So there are things we don't know. There are new players in the team who we know are good players, and they're producing at a really high level in training, in the very limited amount of training that we've seen. And then, okay, how do we create the right role for them? How does that maybe change a role of another player who's a bit more established? And I would love to say going into Thursday night, like, we've got it all figured out in that way, and we don't. I think there's still much more that we have to understand about this team when you add new players. And then there are players that have returned, and they're better than they were last year, and maybe didn't play a big role last year, but now they're in a position where they're performing like at a level where we have to consider a bigger role for them. So I do think that's still a big part of the process we're in right now.
Let me wrap with this. At the outset, I asked you how this program is different during your tenure. How is the culture of soccer on this campus? You mentioned some Big 12 and some other SEC schools and the soccer culture. How have you noticed soccer culture change on the UCF campus and in the community during your time?
Yeah, I didn't understand how big, and I don't know if this was when I was here and I arrived here and if it's this way, but I feel like this is a soccer community. It's reflected, and now I have kids that play soccer as well. So I'm also out at the fields every night, every weekend, watching youth soccer. There are so many teams. There's so many people excited about soccer in Orlando, between Orlando City, us, all the youth soccer that's being played. It's just this is a place where people identify with the sport. I think we have a very international campus as well. So not only this is now a sport that's embraced by Americans, which when I was growing up, that really wasn't the case. But now this is a mainstream sport. So you have that. A lot of people grew up playing soccer now. Students here who now come out and support us. We actually broke the attendance record last year, and I think we could do it again and continue to grow it. And we got great support last year from the student body, from the community, and we need it. We need it. We need people to come to our games. We need people to support our group. We love being able to host the community here.
The 19th ranked Knights kick off the season Thursday against Mercer before hosting number 23 Seattle on Sunday. For the Sons of UCF, I'm Trylko.